The medieval knight who fought in the Crusades survived and disappeared without a trace. In the year 1191, a knight walked out of the burning city of Acre, covered in blood that was not entirely his own, carrying a leather satchel that no one was ever permitted to open. Within 3 years, every record of his existence would be systematically erased from monastery archives across Europe. His name was stripped from military rolls. His family crest was chiseled off stone walls. And the Vatican sealed a file bearing his initials that would not be opened for over 800 years. His name, as best as we can reconstruct it, was Renaud d'Arsène. And for centuries, this was hidden from the world. Welcome back to Historical Secrets. What you're about to hear is a story that most mainstream historians have either ignored or actively avoided. It is the story of a man who should have been celebrated as one of the great survivors of the Third Crusade, a man who fought alongside Richard the Lionheart himself, and yet who was methodically removed from the historical record as though he had never existed at all. To understand how this is possible, we need to go back to the world of 1189. Europe was in a fever. The Holy Land had fallen to Saladin's forces, and the Pope had called every Christian king to arms. The Third Crusade was not just a military campaign, it was an apocalyptic undertaking. Men sold everything they owned, left their families, and marched thousands of miles into a desert they did not understand to fight an enemy they had been taught to dehumanize. Most of them died. They died of disease, of starvation, of heat stroke, and of violence so extreme that even the chroniclers of the age, men who were accustomed to brutality, struggled to describe it. Renaud d'Arsène was among the French contingent that departed from Marseille in the spring of 1190. What historians don't tell you is that we only know this because of a single surviving supply manifest from a Templar outpost in Cyprus. His name appears once, listed alongside 63 other knights. Of those 63, we can confirm that at least 51 died during the siege of Acre alone. Renaud did not die. He fought through the entire siege, which lasted nearly 2 years, and he emerged on the other side. And this is where the story takes its dark turn. The siege of Acre was one of the most brutal engagements of the medieval period. When the city finally fell to Crusader forces in July of 1191, what followed was a massacre that still haunts the historical conscience. Richard the Lionheart ordered the execution of nearly 3,000 Muslim prisoners. It was carried out in full view of Saladin's army. The chronicles describe a field so soaked in blood that horses could not maintain their footing. Renaud d'Arsène was there. We know this because a single letter, discovered in 1907 in a deteriorating abbey in Burgundy, references a knight of that name who did witness the great slaughter and was changed by it beyond the recognition of God. That phrase alone should stop you, changed beyond the recognition of God. In the medieval world, those words carried a weight we can barely comprehend today. They implied spiritual corruption, a soul so altered by what it had seen or done that it was no longer legible to the divine. This was not a compliment. This was a condemnation. The truth was buried for a reason. After the fall of Acre, Renaud d'Arsène did something that no one expected. He did not march south with Richard's army toward Jaffa. He did not return to France with the wounded. Instead, according to fragmented accounts, he traveled east into territory controlled by Saladin's forces, alone, carrying that leather satchel. A Hospitaller report from late 1191 mentions a French knight matching his description being seen in the company of Arab scholars near the ruins of an ancient library outside Damascus. A Genoese merchant's diary places a man called the Silent Frank in Cairo by the following spring. Let that settle in. A Crusader knight, within months of one of the bloodiest Christian victories in the Holy Land, voluntarily crossed enemy lines and embedded himself in the Islamic world. In the 12th century, this was not cultural exchange. This was apostasy. This was treason against God. The evidence, scattered and fragmentary as it is, suggests that Renaud d'Arsenne had discovered something during the fall of Acre. Multiple sources reference the satchel, always with unease. One Templar correspondence, partially burned and recovered from a priory in Portugal, refers to documents taken from beneath the old mosque during the sacking of the city. Another, written in a cipher that was not decoded until 1983, warns that a certain brother has taken what belongs to the temple and fled into the arms of the Saracen. What was in that satchel? This changes everything we thought we knew about the intellectual plunder of the Crusades. Modern scholars who have examined the surviving fragments believe Renaud may have recovered pre-Islamic astronomical texts, possibly translations of lost Greek manuscripts that had been preserved in Acre's libraries for centuries. Others have proposed something far more controversial, that the documents contained early Christian writings that contradicted the theological positions Rome had spent centuries enforcing. Writings that, if made public, could have undermined the very justification for the Crusades themselves. We will likely never know with certainty. What we do know is what happened next, or rather, what did not happen next. Renaud d'Arsenne vanished. After the Cairo sighting in 1192, there is nothing. No death record, no burial site, no further letters. No family in France came forward to claim his lands, which itself is deeply suspicious, because in the feudal system, land was everything, and families fought viciously over inheritance. It is as though the d'Arsenne name itself was extinguished by agreement. The family chapel in the Languedoc region, which local records confirm existed as late as 1187, shows no trace today. Even the foundation stones are gone. And then there is the Vatican file. In 2004, a researcher working in the Apostolic Archive, formerly known as the Secret Archive, cataloged a sealed dossier bearing the initials R.A. and the date 1194. A formal request to examine the contents was denied. A second request, filed in 2011, was also denied. The stated reason was that the materials were in too fragile a condition to be handled. Scholars who have pressed the matter have been met with silence. For centuries, someone has wanted this story to remain untold. The erasure was too thorough, too systematic to be accidental. Monastery records do not simply lose pages. Family chapels do not simply vanish. Crests do not chisel themselves off walls. Someone, whether it was the Templars protecting their secrets, the Vatican protecting its doctrine, or some other hand we have not yet identified, made a deliberate decision that Renaud d'Arsenne would be forgotten. But here is what keeps me searching. In a private collection in Istanbul, there exists a 13th century Arabic manuscript that describes a European man who spent his final years translating ancient texts in a mountain village in what is now Lebanon. The manuscript calls him Al-Faranj al-Samit, the Silent Frank, the same name the Genoese merchant used. The manuscript says he died peacefully, surrounded by books, and that he was buried facing neither Mecca nor Rome, but toward the stars. A knight who saw the worst of what holy war could produce, who carried forbidden knowledge out of a burning city, who walked away from everything he had been taught to believe, and who chose silence, study, and the stars over glory, gold, and God. Maybe that is exactly why they erased him. Not because he was dangerous, but because he found a kind of peace that no crusade was ever meant to offer. Now, if this story unsettled you, wait until you hear what we've uncovered next. There is a tomb beneath a church in southern Italy that has been sealed since 1347, the year the Black Death arrived. What is inside that tomb, and why has every attempt to open it been blocked for nearly 700 years? Subscribe to Historical Secrets and turn on notifications so you do not miss that one. It is going to change everything.